Well, greetings and good day, everybody. I'm Dr. Kinston J. Griffin, and I am super excited to be beneath the maples and the oaks in Salisbury, North Carolina, at none other than Livingstone College, my proud alma mater. But today, up close and in person, we have the 13th president of our beloved institution, Dr. Anthony Davis. I am super excited to be sitting down with you, sir, and good day.
Good day, but I'm the one who's excited because I'm sitting down with a living legend. Wherever I go, someone says, "Do you know Kinston Griffin?" I said, "Do I know Kinston Griffin?" And so thank you for being a living logo of what we do on the campus of Livingstone College. And you just didn't arrive here. You've been that way for the 20 or so years that I've known you. So thank you, as the young people say, for always representing.
Well, you have represented, and I remember the time, but I don't want to take for granted that everybody knows who you are. We have a history. I mean, I remember you as a student and coming back and doing everything in advancement, but there are thousands among thousands of people that are going to see this because the world's going to see it. But for those that have not had the privilege that I've had, tell us who you are. I think that's important for us to know.
Well, I'm Dr. Anthony J. Davis. I'm a father. I'm a mentor. I'm a friend. I'm a husband. But most people look at where you land and they have a disregard for your launch. I come from humble beginnings, very humble beginnings. You're looking at someone who was 90 days from aging out of foster care. That might not resonate with people because you say, well, what does that mean? Well, when you're in foster care, when you hit that 18th birthday, the checks stop.
Wow.
And when the checks stop, depending upon the foster home you were in, could mean that you're now homeless, no place to go, and oftentimes you're not prepared to navigate life. I was 90 days from aging out of foster care. Come from humble beginnings, born of a teenage mom, and the night I was born, her mother dies.
Wow.
So we're both mandated to be wards of the state. They send me to this elderly woman in New Haven, Connecticut by the name of Louise Moore. Elderly woman with no children of her own. If they had a GOAT, a greatest of all times for foster care, I think it would have been her. Raise boys, none of her own, into men. She took me when everyone else said no. No one wanted to take a mom and a newborn baby together. She said, "I'm too old. I can't do it. I'm sickly." But they convinced her to keep me for a weekend. She keeps me for a weekend, falls in love with me. And you know what? When they came to pick me up on Monday, she told them, "Just give me what you got. I'm going to take this one."
Wow.
And from the time she made that statement, made that decision, she made sure that I knew that I had a special calling because that's what God told her. And so rather than let me waste time, as she would say, that's why I'm not an athlete like a Kinston Griffin.
Oh.
My jump shot is a little suspect, but I could get it in the basket. I could play a little baseball. But for her, she said athletics is not going to be your ticket. Academics. So when I'm a kid, a youngster, I'm wondering why I had to recite The Creation by James Weldon Johnson. I'm wondering why I had to recite poems by Langston Hughes, Hold Fast to Dreams, which is one of my favorite even today. And when I would complain about it, she would say, "I'm preparing you for life after emancipation." I didn't know what that meant. For her, she says, by the time you turn 18, you're going to have to be ready to tackle life in a way that others won't.
Wow.
She made sure. When I would want to go to open gym and work on that jump shot, I went to one of the best community schools in the country. And what I mean by that, it was a community school. It was a community school back then that operated 6 days a week. And I wanted to go to open gym. She said, "You're going to go to Stetson Library and you're going to open a book."
Well, that was your open gym.
That was it. That was it.
So let me ask you a question because I think this is important. So this is actually going into, because I got a series of questions, this is going into this thing called the journey. Because people see you now as the president, but you had a journey to get to this particular piece. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Well, again, I told you about, when I was born, how I navigated public schools. I'm a product of the public school system. In 8th grade, a pivot happened.
Okay.
I'm top math student, top science student in my middle school. I had a guidance counselor. I don't want anyone to go back on profiles and try to say their name or whatever. She said, "You're so smart." She says, "You would make a great machinist."
Okay, come again. You're smart, but you'd make a great machinist. There's nothing wrong with a machinist, but
Top math, top science student. I'm not tracked to go to a high school in college prep, STEM. You would make a good machinist.
wow.
So when we talk about systematic racism or the symbols and symptoms that I talk about, I'm a product of that. And so I ended up going to a vocational technical high school. I wasn't a machinist. I scored so high, I was in electronics. So I had the highest, what they would call trade. But that helped me because when I was aging out of foster care, I took the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Test. I took it, and I scored so high in math and science, they had me come back and take it again. Because they thought it was a fluke. No one from my zip code should score that high, right? So I
Wow.
take the test, take it a second time, and they tell me, "We want you to take a test for OCS, Officer Candidate School." I took that test, and I'm going to be honest, I bombed. Because the things on that test, an inner city youth from New Haven, from public schools, could not navigate that test.
Wow.
But I scored so high that they put me in a career field that set me up for upward mobility. They put me in a lab tech career field, waived the admissions requirement to get into that career field because I scored so high in math and science. I didn't need college chemistry or college algebra to take it. They waived it and took my scores, and the rest is history. That's part of the journey. And so I was a lab tech, worked in hospital laboratories, third shift generalist, blood banking, hematology, urinalysis, clinical chemistry, all of that. That's what I did. Worked in a trauma center, and I loved it. But then life called me in a different direction. I became a voice for the underserved, the underrepresented, and the under-resourced. This is where God starts to change my path and my trajectory. And so I talked about my foster mother preparing me. But then at 24, something else happens. The mother who gave me birth, we finally connected. We reconnected at age 24. And it was by God's design that I had my foster mother prepare me up into a certain point. And then when my mother, Wanda Gibbs, God bless her soul, who just left me last July, when she came into my life, she started to now say, "Now that you're prepared to do this, let me tell you, God has something better for you to do." Because I was really distracted, and it was almost derailing what ultimately I believed to be my purpose. And it was my mom, Wanda Gibbs, "You need to go back to college. Not only need to go back to college, you need to accept the call that God has in your life." And you know what? My mom was my biggest cheerleader, my biggest consultant, and my largest change agent. Because when I was off course, she had no problem with bringing me back to get me on this path.
Wow. I mean, that story alone is just fascinating because just think about, I'm just sitting here listening to you and I got chills, and so many young people that are unfortunately maybe not thinking that they can make it or do it or had circumstances, not just young people, even adults, is thinking that, I got dealt a dirty hand, but you took the hand and used that hand, and that hand was a major difference. Okay, so now we're here. 13. 180 days plus in. As my grandma would say, "Baby, you're 6 months in." What in the world has it been like? Because many times, and this is a research point, research shows that 87% of individuals that are inside of an organization traditionally don't normally get the job. It's an external person. So you beat all the odds, you got the unanimous vote from the selection committee, but you're 180 days in because your previous job was a great job, but you're the president now.
Ooh, trying to remind me of that. Right?
Yes, the president.
I-
Like you got a parking space,
Right.
but you got other stuff that you got a whole bunch of other things going. So tell us about the 180 days.
First 180 days, I will tell you, I love alliteration. All right, here we go. You ready for it?
Yes, sir.
Fast, furious, and fruitful.
Look, let me write that down. Fast, furious, and fruitful.
Yes. First 180 days have been fast, furious, and fruitful. I didn't have time for a honeymoon. I mean, think about this. I'm named the last week in September. 7 days later, I moved from being the chief operating officer to president. 7 days. In my first 7 days, and it was on my report. So I share my reports with the world. I'm always going to be trusting, transparent, and trustworthy. So I shared my 100-day report with everyone in the world. The same report that I share with the board, I share with all of our constituents, all of our stakeholders, right? But my first 7 days, I'm dealing with a parent who cited Livingstone College for toxicity relative to our athletic program. I had to deal with a shooting on our campus at homecoming. After executing homecoming safely for 6 days, 23 hours without a single incident, locals have a little skirmish, which results in gunfire. Someone said, well, maybe it was the artist you had. Maybe and I said this. I said we could have had James Cleveland on stage singing "I Don't Feel No Ways Tired," and these two would have found a reason to have beef. But that's par for the course, right? Because when you take this seat, you take the good, the bad, and the ugly that comes with it. So I can't say that I want the presidency without the problems that come with it.
That's good.
Fast, furious, but fruitful.
But fruitful.
First 100 days, in the first 2 weeks, I took my senior staff on a tour. We did a walking tour. We walked through the best residence halls that we have to offer. And then we went to what I call the worst. And I said, and in my administration, I shared it with the alumni during homecoming, that my first priority is to deal with the living conditions on this campus related to my students. And I said that I would do something. And our students trusted my leadership. I said help was on the way. Help came with an announcement at Founders Day that in May of this year, we will begin $7 million of residence hall refurbishment on the campus of Livingstone College. 100 days, that's at the 100-day point that we were able to secure $4 million to start the project. And I reappropriated another $3 million that we had from another pot of money or another pocket of money on our campus that was probably appropriated for something else. What I said is we can't invest in an academic building, repairs in an academic building, upgrading an academic building, unless we prioritize and help our students and their families. The least we could do, that if our students trust us with their academic preparation, we can at least make them comfortable.
Right. Well, I gotta ask it because people are listening, because you talked about the residence halls and some deferred maintenance, and I think it goes without saying that we've had some media attention, whether it was mold or whatever the case may be. How have you been able to address that? Because a good interview can't just be all the layup questions. So there allegedly is some challenges with our buildings.
Most definitely. So you think about Livingstone College. Most of our buildings are aged. With that comes the problems with aging buildings, infrastructure. Murphy's Law. If something can go wrong, it will. We had a water heater go out in one of the women's residence halls. It went out on a Friday. Friday at 4:45 p.m. 4:45. You can't find a commercial water heater at 5 p.m. on a Friday when the weekend starts. So we're looking at a repair solution. Had repairs here all weekend, didn't work out. But by Monday morning, we had already found a commercial water heater because you can't go to Lowe's or Home Depot. We found one, had it on the truck. They told us it was on the truck. We paid for it because they're not going to just tell you, well, we'll send it. We had to pay for it. We paid for it. And it was on the way. And while it was on the way, my students use their platform. We have to realize that in today's society, everyone has a voice. That's the power of social media. Everyone has a voice. Fact or fiction, everyone has a voice.
True.
And you have to sift through that and believe what you want to believe. Well, we had already found a solution for that. Students take to social media and say, hey, we don't have any hot water. So alums and others are like, oh, they don't have water, that's terrible. And then you get all the other comments with it. But we had already figured out a solution for it. Here's what I learned in the first 100 days, that people will respect you if you are, first of all, responsible and responsive. When you share the facts, they go, oh, that's reasonable.
Right.
But you got to be willing to share the information. Crumbling infrastructure is real. That's why I'm appreciative to people like Congresswoman Alma Adams, who is trying to look at HBCUs and infrastructure. I spent the last 2 weeks fighting to get a piece or have voice into the governor's budget to talk about infrastructure in not just Livingstone, but all of the private HBCUs.
Good for you, Mr. President.
Because what people don't recognize is we might be private, but students come to Livingstone not because they want to be exclusive, oftentimes because they've been excluded. And if 58% of my students come from the state of North Carolina, and you say that you want an educated workforce in the state of North Carolina, recognizing that Livingstone College serves the underserved, underrepresented, and under-resourced, critical to the educational ecosystem, we need you to make capital investment in Livingstone College so that we can execute our mission more effectively.
So we're asking the governor and other people, but what is Livingstone doing to make college more affordable or accessible or safe or clean? What are we doing here?
Here is a little known Black history fact about Livingstone College. And I'd love to have dialogue with alumni and friends who say, where's the money going? What we charge is not what we collect. Can we be honest? There was a study in 2004, the Robertson Foundation. They did something called a financial equilibrium study. Here's what the narrative said in 2004. Students and families who take Livingstone College, who choose Livingstone College for their academic preparation, do not have the financial wherewithal to attend, and in most cases will exceed their borrowing capacity. Watch this. That was in 2004, when tuition and fees was around $18,500. Today, fast forward 2023, I'm aging myself. 2023, it's now about $25,672. Our population hasn't changed.
No.
97% of our students are Pell eligible. 73% are first generation college attendees. Here's the Black history fact. When you talk about deferred maintenance, Livingstone College has doubled down on what we were doing when you were here. Regardless of your socioeconomic status, we find a way to help students and their families. Here's how much it costs. $4.2 million annually that we take out of our annual operating budget to help students and their family. Not from our endowment. Our endowment is only $6 million.
Well, say that again.
Our endowment, 144 years after our inception, is $6 million, which means with a 5% distribution rate, that means every year, roughly, we have about $30,000 that rolls off of that endowment.
So I'm listening, but I'm taking a note on that, because a $6 million endowment after 144 years.
We got work to do.
Yes.
And that's one of my platforms during my first contract. Listen to this. $4.2 million. In order to support students and their family, we would need to have an endowment of $84 million just to support the need if we're giving away $4.2 million every year. But what people don't understand is that Accounting, Dr. McLeod, my accounting professor right here at Livingstone, told me that you got to remember that there's always two sides. You have the credit side of your ledger and you have the debit side.
Yeah.
So it's going to hit your balance sheet in one place or the other.
Or the other.
So if you discount $4.2 million on the revenue side, you have to discount $4.2 million on the service side.
So what I'm understanding is 97%. Well, I'll even make it more personalized. I won't say what year, but in the 90s, I was one of those recipients. You know, football was great, the prayer choir was good, but there was still some grants and loans and things. So so you're telling me from the 90s to the 2023, it hasn't changed, but inflation has still gone up.
That's right. And so
Wow.
we have to make college not only accessible, it has to be affordable. It has to be affordable. So in order for us to do that, we're going to have to really look at our economic model. How can we continue to help our students and their families? But here's what I want to say about that. Our population hasn't changed. What does that mean? That means that we're unapologetically on mission, because if the same people keep showing up, if the same population keeps showing up to the hospital for wellness, that means we're doing something right.
Yes.
And I'm glad that U.S. News and World Report finally got it right as it relates to Livingstone College.